Pranam Swamiji, Pranam Siddharthji. I welcome Siddhartha Krishna ji on behalf of our forum and all the attendees here present today for this webinar. And I would request Pujya Swamiji to introduce Siddhartha ji to every one of us. Pranam Swamiji.
Namaste everyone. This night we are so delighted to have a very distinguished teacher of Vedanta speaking to all of us. It was late 2014 that along with the late Professor Siddhartha Gautam from North Carolina, I first met Sri Siddhartha Krishna ji. I must thank Swami Abhishek Chaitanya Giri, the Mahamandaleshwar at Brahma Vidya Sannyasa Ashram, for introducing him to us. And from then on, I have always had great love and regard for Siddhartha Krishna ji. That time, he joined us in a 2-day program in Rishikesh, and it was on Upanishads, Upanishad Conclave it was called. And Dr. Siddhartha Gautam of North Carolina, whom I mentioned, who unfortunately is no more with us now, was also so thrilled. And he and I then went over to Omkarananda Ashram and met Siddhartha Krishna ji over there, also had wonderful exchange of thoughts. Later on and off, we have been in touch. And the last time I met him was in Solon, where I have been living for some 7 to 8 years at the beautiful Baba Chalaram Ashram, where I was so blessed to have a darshan of his revered father, whom I prostrated to on that occasion. Well, Siddhartha Krishna ji has been teaching yoga, Vedanta, the philosophy, and Indian darshanas. And perhaps the best way to introduce him is to say that he teaches at that ashram in Rishikesh.
I think we lost Swamiji.
Yeah.
Is it? Yes.
Pranam Swamiji. He is here, but I don't know what has happened.
Maybe he needs to reconnect.
I'm getting his phone engaged. So there must be some connectivity problem because in a remote, this place is where he's staying.
Yes.
Oh. Number is switched off. There's some connectivity problem. Please bear with us. Or after 5 minutes, otherwise we can. So that's Krishnanji can start then the presentation. If Swamiji cannot make it,
Okay.
At the end, then he will be meeting us, or whenever he is connected.
Yes.
We'll wait for. Here he's back.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm really sorry. So many of you were inconvenienced. I have two sources of internet. One of them looks like failed, so I am connected to the another. Sorry. So I continue. Kailas Ashram is a very reputed ashram of Vedanta learning. That's where Siddhartha Krishna ji has studied before and is now teaching at several places in that place. And on YouTube and at other places, anyone can hear and watch his videos. And I would not be long on this, but I assure all of you who are new to him that you may expect a wonderful, very comprehensive coverage of the topic that he has chosen for this webinar. On behalf of all, and especially on behalf of the Fawai Forum, I extend a very hearty welcome to him and request him to share his thoughts with all of us on this very beautiful and essential topic, aspects of Karma Yoga. Namaste, Siddharth Krishna ji. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. It is such a pleasure, a great honor to be once again with you after that beautiful event, the Upanishad conclave. I too must thank Swami Abhishek Chaitanya ji for connecting us back then and once again this time too. So both of the times, yo jagas tatra durlabha, as they say, the one that connects is always very difficult to find. So if Swamiji permits and Brahmacharini Vibha Chaitanya ji permits, may I start?
Please.
Okay. So just let us start with once again a few moments of silence just to settle down. To bring our attention into the present moment, to be with ourselves. So that we can explore this aspect of our life. How action, which is happening every moment in our body, in our speech, in our mind, how can it be transformed into something spiritually meaningful? Bhadram no apivatayamanaha. Om Shantihi. 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 Param Pujya Swamiji, my dear friends from different parts of the globe joining me in here. Today I wish to share a few thoughts about the different dimensions of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, which is the yoga of action, is the first of the three forms of yoga discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, along with the yoga of devotion, the yoga of supreme love, and the yoga of wisdom. The idea is that as a practice which purifies the heart and prepares a practitioner for other forms of yoga, it seems that the Gita, one of the most comprehensive instructions on yoga, places a lot of emphasis on the yoga in action. This is why I want to explore its various dimensions and their application in our daily life. So, the idea, the story of Karma Yoga starts with actionlessness. It's strange. Action in actionlessness. That's where the story starts. And that's where we will see the story ends. From a misunderstanding of actionlessness, which we might think as just simply not doing any action, into a proper understanding of actionlessness, of a state which transcends all activities. This is what this journey is about. So if by actionlessness we understand that it means not to perform any action, and that is what maybe some of the meditative traditions, when they proclaimed that action leads to bondage, they saw actions as a means to bondage and saw wisdom, direct insight, proper insight as a token to freedom, and therefore thought of giving up one's duties, one's actions. Krishna thinks that this is against the principle of life because this physical body, even this physical body, would not be able to function properly if we would not engage in action. In fact, not working with our body and leading a life in which there is so little activity is the cause of so many physical problems today, sicknesses in our body. So Krishna gives the idea of wheel of life, cycle of life. The example that he gives is that, for example, water gets absorbed by the rays of the sun for 8 months, then it showers down as rain, as snow for 4 months, and this makes food and life possible. Life on this earth is possible due to constant movement, constant activity happening on so many different levels, out there as well as within myself. every organ, such as the heart, every cell in my body. And then if we go even deeper, then every atom in my body, activity is happening on every level. Everything is in a constant state of flux. Everything is constantly moving. So everything around us, including this seemingly static, motionless earth, is also constantly moving. So Krishna's idea is that someone who does not follow this natural cycle, there is something lacking in such a person's life. So Krishna brings this idea to the forefront to address what he sees as a misunderstanding in some contemplative traditions where it was thought that action leads to bondage. That's why practitioners of meditation, the old saying says, that's why they don't engage in action. Instead, they pursue deeper insight. For Krishna, ultimately, nirvana, the word that he uses so often in the Bhagavad Gita for the goal of human life, does not come from actionlessness, but it comes by passionately being engaged in the well-being of all beings. Sarva bhuta hite rataha, to be constantly engaged in the well-being of all beings. But the interesting thing is to see how he develops this idea. It's to be able to be selflessly engaged in the well-being of all beings. First of all, we need to change something in ourselves. This tool, this physical tool to serve others, we have to do something with this. So the first thing that he mentions is that we have to free ourselves from this misunderstanding of actionlessness, and this is done by engaging wholeheartedly in what he calls niyata karma, which I may translate, that's now the second step from actionlessness, from laziness, from not performing actions into whatever allotted work. We may call it allotted work, prescribed work, we may call it our duty, whatever duties we have. So the word that he uses, niyata karma, allotted work. But then allotted by whom? By someone else? No. Allotted by our own nature, by our natural state of being, by our innate and inherent disposition. In Krishna's understanding, in Bhagavad Gita's understanding, our nature is the result of the subtle impressions which have been impressed on our mind due to our past actions. The kind of person that we are today, with the kind of inclinations and interests that we have, are the results of our past deeds. So whatever we have decided for ourselves, such as in the case of Arjuna, Arjuna had accumulated so much knowledge about warfare as a great warrior, as a great hero. For years and years together, he worked tremendously hard to accumulate the deep science of warfare for the purpose of being a strong person to protect the weak, to protect righteousness, to protect law and order in the society. So this was completely his choice. This was not Krishna's choice. This was his choice. So this was his nature, this was his natural, inherent disposition, which he had chosen himself, for himself. That was his duty. So this is an extreme example. Mahabharata goes into extreme examples because it creates these complex plots. But each one of us has our own duties, depending on the kind of education that we have received, depending on the place we have in the society, depending on different relationships. As a son, I have some duties towards my parents. As a teacher, I have some duties towards my students. As a student, I have some duties towards my masters, to pay homage to them, to respect them, to remember them whenever, to be thankful, to have a sense of gratitude towards them. So all these types of duties, which arise out of the kind of person that I am, not to run away, not to leave those duties, but instead engaging wholeheartedly in it, so that I may not fall into false actionlessness. And yes, the thing that I can do constantly, and one should do, is to constantly work on improving this inherent disposition, this nature. This is not something hard that cannot be changed. It can always be improved. There is another Gita by a butcher, Dharmavyadha, in the Upanishads, where he imparts teachings of dharma, righteousness, and he says that this has been my work, this has been my job. By the time I woke up to the higher truth, I was already doing this. So this was my work, this was my duty. But now I realize that this is a work which inflicts tremendous suffering on others. So I'm working to improve my understanding. That's what he says, that I realize that this is a very ruthless and a work in which I inflict suffering on other living beings, but I'm constantly trying to improve my nature. So at the same time, and in the understanding of Krishna, one thing that if it is innate, if it is inherent to our disposition, then we should not think whether it is a good work or bad work, but we should engage in it wholeheartedly, as long as it is our duty, as long as it is our allotted work. So this is the first step that Krishna speaks about. We could think of another example, such as a doctor, who is the result of his own past education, tremendous hard work that he put into becoming a doctor. The work, not only his own work, but also the work of all those who supported him into becoming what he is today. He has also to express gratitude to them. And now his allotted duty is to save lives. The moment somebody is in this situation where he's maybe dying, then the doctor cannot run away from there. So Krishna's idea is that if in the name of meditation or higher realization, he gives up his work, his duty towards the sick or the dying, then such renunciation would be mistaken. He should instead strive towards realization while tending the sick, like the great master of yoga in modern times, Swami Shivananda from Divine Life Society, who was originally a doctor. And all his life, he continued to be a doctor. He took it as his duty, as his selfless duty. I remember reading in his life that when a very sick Swami came to him late at night, he said, Swamiji, I don't have the medicine for you. You have to wait till tomorrow morning when the medicine will arrive here. And by the time the medicine arrived in the morning, Swami Shivananda took the medicine and looked for that saint, for that Swami, and he realized that that Swami had already gone to Garudchatti, which is another 3-4 kilometers ahead from Lakshman Jhula, 4-5 kilometers. So what Swami Shivanandaji instantly did, he took that medicine and ran after him and found him in Garudchatti and gave the medicine to him. That Swami Shivananda, one of the greatest masters of yoga in modern time, who was trained as a doctor, never ceased to be a doctor. He remained a doctor in all his life and served everyone that he could through that which he saw as his duty, as well as by giving knowledge, wisdom of yoga, and through all the beautiful books that he has written. So what Krishna then points out is that if such a person would renounce his or her duty due to confusion or lack of clarity, then such renunciation is the lowest kind of renunciation. And if he renounces his duty due to fear of physical discomfort, then also such renunciation needs to be totally avoided. Krishna says that then such renunciation is totally useless. It does not lead us anywhere. The advice Krishna gives instead is that engage more than ever into your duty. Don't renounce that. If you really want to renounce something, because Krishna agrees that renunciation is indeed what nourishes us on the spiritual path. There is this beautiful saying from the Upanishads, nourish yourself through renunciation. Then what? Not the renunciation of one's work, not the renunciation of one's duties, but two types of claims. The first claim is the claim to its reward. The result that this should be mine. If you really want to renounce, then don't renounce your duty, but renounce its reward. This helps us in reducing our desires, which is the fundamental cause of suffering. So this is the first claim that can be renounced while doing our duties. And the second claim is to the work itself. This is more subtle, that I am doing it. I'm the one who is doing it. When we renounce this claim to work, which means the claim of doership, this gives rise to the capacity to be a mere witness to what is happening on the physical level, what is happening in speech, and what is happening on a mind. We get a third person's perspective to that. So it is my nature which is engaging the body-mind apparatus in this work. I'm just a mere witness to that. This realization, the first one, is easier to renounce the reward, which means to give it back to the society. Krishna's Ishvara, Krishna's Lord, resides within the hearts of all beings. So for him, if he says that offer the reward, the fruit of your action to the divine, it simply means to the divine present within the hearts of all beings, not only human beings, but all beings. Which means without any consideration of caste, creed, linguistic identity, ethnic identity, cultural identity, religious identity, without any such consideration. Wherever the opportunity arises to share the results of our actions with someone, we should do that. And ultimately, even the sense of doership. For Krishna, this is the greatest form of renunciation. So now the next steps of karma yoga that I'm going to discuss are about renouncing these two claims. So the idea of niyata karma, which means engaging in our allotted work, helps us to recognize one fundamental fact of the yogic teaching on karma yoga, that no matter what our work is, no matter what our duty is, if we make the correct choices, it can become a means of inner purification. It can become a means of inner development, and then eventually can lead us into that state of meditation in which there is no agitation at all. For that, we don't need to get away from our duty, from our work. We don't need to go and find some other new work to practice karma yoga. We can start practicing it with whatever we are already doing, with whatever we are best at. We can start practicing karma yoga with that. So this is what the idea of niyata karma helps us recognize practically in our life. Now, as the next step towards inner development, Krishna adds another layer. So this niyata karma, I went a little bit further ahead. This was just engaging ourselves in our duty, in our work wholeheartedly, so that we don't fall into laziness. There is still no idea of renouncing the rewards. That was going a little bit further ahead. I could not stop myself. I jumped a little bit. But here, the idea of engaging in allotted duty, just this much, has been mentioned. Then Krishna adds another layer, which can be translated as sacrifice. And what's the layer of sacrifice? Whatever work we have chosen for ourselves, first of all, we engage it, okay, because we need to live, so we keep the rewards for ourselves. But then gradually, starting with sacrificing a little bit of it for a greater purpose. And this happens when we realize something, that like a farmer, he has to sacrifice some of his product for a future crop. He cannot eat away everything. He has to, even if he is hungry, even if his family is hungry, he has to keep some seeds for the future crop. Because even though Mother Nature gives back tenfold, she demands some sacrifice from our part. If we sow 1 kg of seeds, she gives us back hundreds of kgs, or maybe tens of kgs at least. But that 1 kg of seeds from our results has to be sacrificed, has to be planted. We have to distance ourselves from that. It has to be given back to Mother Nature for her to give us more. Yajna, the idea of sacrifice, the next layer that Krishna adds to our duty, to our work, encourages us to recognize this fact and sacrifice some of our work's result for a higher purpose. And that is where then Krishna refers to the 5 fundamental types of sacrifices that the Vedic masters encourage everyone to do on a daily basis. The first sacrifice is the sacrifice that we make to receive the teachings on light, the teachings of wisdom in our life, that also demands a lot of sacrifice. So that is the first sacrifice. Brahma yajna, it is called in Sanskrit. The Vedas speak of it. Krishna Yajurveda speaks of these 5 types of sacrifices. So the first, even now when we are sitting here, we are sacrificing time, we are sacrificing our effort, we could have done many other things, but we are sacrificing our quality time for this. So this sacrifice. And then the second sacrifice is sacrifice for light, so that we can meditate on light in its earthly manifestation. We can learn from light. There is so much. In fact, all the teachings of yoga, it is amazing. The more we meditate on light, and now I'm just speaking about the physical manifestation of light. The more we meditate on light, we realize, the more we understand. The more we understand light out there, the more we understand this inner light of consciousness. This is an amazing, amazing thing. And that's why sacrificing some time to be with light, to be able to meditate on light and express gratitude to the universal forces, thankfulness to the universal forces, to the macrocosmic forces such as Mother Earth, etc., which sustains us, and then microcosmic forces, the forces active within this body, and then also temporal forces, the forces active in time. This is all what the Vedic sacrifices, the second type of sacrifice, is about. The third sacrifice that the masters speak of is an expression of gratitude to our parents, to our ancestors who continue to live in our body if they are no more alive. And if they are alive, then whatever needs to be done for them, taking care of them, our duty towards them. That's the third type of sacrifice. And the fourth type of sacrifice is an expression of gratitude to all humanity. It can be as simple as welcoming an unannounced guest at our home, but anything that we sacrifice as an expression of gratitude to humanity, that's the fourth type of yajna, the fourth type of sacrifice. And the fifth one is the sacrifice as an expression of gratitude to all animals, to birds and all other life forms. It can be as simple as giving a piece of bread to a dog, of giving some food to birds, of just even pouring a little bit of water into a tree or a plant, seeing the omnipresent divinity present within that plant as well. So when these are all daily opportunities where we can share the results, the rewards of some of our actions with others, in pursuit of knowledge, in pursuit of understanding, light, in bringing happiness to our parents, in bringing happiness and satisfaction to human beings around us, and in bringing happiness, joy, even to all other animals, all other life forms. These are the 5 types of sacrifices that the Vedic masters speak of. If you look at the science of sacrifice, I will just point at 2 things. I know many of you personally, you have visited India, and you might have seen how fire sacrifices are performed in this country. Swaha, swaha, swaha. You might have heard this being chanted repeatedly on microphones, but no one ever asks what this mantra in a sacrifice really means. There is a whole story that the primordial man, the first human being, when the moment of sacrifice came, he hesitated a little bit and he asked, shall I offer it? This is from the Shatapatha Brahmana, for those of you who know the Vedic texts. He hesitated and asked that, shall I offer it or shall I not offer it? Whenever we share the results of our hard work, there is always a part of it who says, no, 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 I want to keep it for myself. Should I give it? Should I give it not? Should I give it? Should I give it not? There is always this is a very natural human tendency. Part of me stops me from giving it, and part of me wants me to give it. Now the question is, who do I listen to? Which part of my being do I listen to? To my pettiness or to my greatness? So the story goes that when he hesitated, should I give it? Should I not give it? Then his own greatness said to him, offer it, give it. And then he realized that just right now, my own greatness, my own dignity, my true nature has just spoken to me. Sva aha. Sva means my true nature, and aha has just spoken to me. Therefore, in that moment when he offered, when he sacrificed, then he uttered swaha. And that's why even today a sacrificial offering is made uttering swaha. Whenever we give something, we say swaha, just to remind us that it is our greatness, my greatness that pushes me to offer. No one else, no one out there, but my true nature, my greatness challenges me and inspires me to share the rewards of my hard work with others. That is the idea of yajna. After swaha, sometimes also we say in Sanskrit, idam namama. This does not belong to me now anymore. So we overcome the sense of possessiveness towards the object being offered. Now I have no relationship to this. I totally renounce it. So in a way, this idea of sacrifice for a higher purpose, this introduces a reduction into this tendency to hold unto everything, to cling unto everything. So the idea of sacrifice inspires us to sacrifice some results of our actions for a higher purpose, instead of keeping all the fruits of our hard work for ourselves. We learn to share it with others. So that is now the third step that Krishna speaks about. After that, then the next step is to share all the rewards. That's first of all, we just share some. But then gradually, as we grow into this practice and as we see the benefit that how much I benefit by giving to others, the immense growth, inner growth and happiness that I receive as a result of that, the more I become convinced of that, the more I want to work for others. So that is when I gradually start becoming free from desire for the actions, for the results of my actions. The result will be produced, but we will not claim it for ourselves. We will offer it back to all. This renunciation of the fruits, which are lawfully ours because we have worked so hard for them, gives rise to immense inner development. That's the fourth step that he speaks of, nishkāma karma, which means action with no selfish purpose. To perform action just for the sake of inner purification, just for the sake of removing agitating tendencies, ignorance, coloring of the mind, hatred, fear, etc. In this way, karma yoga then becomes a very powerful detergent to clean the heart from agitating ideas, tendencies which might cause agitation when we do sit down in meditation. Once a person frees themselves from particularly desire and hatred, these two things, Krishna says, then he's in a state of nirvana even while alive. Abhito Brahma Nirvanam, whether he's alive or is about to die, in both cases, he is in a state of nirvana. In fact, we can actually serve properly others only after our heart is free from desire and from hatred, from attachment and from hatred. So the idea of desireless action, the action in which there is no desire for any of its results, but the results are offered back totally, all its results are completely that part of action. This inspires us to do this idea. Through this idea, Krishna inspires us to do all our works with no selfish desire. Instead of keeping the fruits for ourselves, we share them with others. So the difference between sacrifice and desireless action was that in sacrifice, we were simply sharing some of the results, not all of it. We were keeping a lot for ourselves, but at the same time, we were also sacrificing something. That was sacrifice. But now, desireless action is the kind of action in which from the very beginning we say that the result of this action I have no claim to it. I don't want to keep it for myself. This will be offered back to the society, to others. Such action, the moment we start engaging in this action, this resolution that we make before that makes it, that our resolution makes it desireless action, action free from desire. Now just see the idea of the Buddha, that the idea of the yogic masters, that desire is the fundamental cause of all suffering. Through desireless action, Krishna has taken us to a level of action where we can start practicing desirelessness. So desireless is no more a theory of the mind, which we have to practice on a mental level, but it is really being introduced into the activity that we have been doing all the time. And this is the level when, in fact, our karma yoga, our action, devotion, love, supreme love, the yoga of bhakti, the yoga of love starts to flow into it. The confluence happens because it is only in love that we can actually work totally free from desire. When we love someone, we do everything for them and we don't want anything in response. We just do it out of love. Just purely out of love. When a mother takes care of her child, she does not want anything in response. She does it all purely out of love. So complete freedom from desire, she does not want to get money as a result of that, nor fame, nor any such mundane thing, but it gives her tremendous joy because she loves her child. That's why she works, free from desire for that child. So this is the level where now bhakti yoga, devotion, love, bhakti, which we translate generally in English as devotion, in fact in Sanskrit simply means supreme love or service. So if we unite love and service, that is bhakti yoga. That now flows into karma yoga. Our karma yoga has already started, has now started assimilating bhakti yoga in itself. And then after giving up the results of our actions, the next step, and the more subtle step, and the final step is to give up even the sense of doership that I am doing it. Instead of thinking that I am doing this desireless action, I am the one who is doing it. Let's calm down and think that this is naturally flowing out of me. Inspiration is coming and it is happening. Whatever is happening from my body, it is happening from my body. The inspiration comes from God knows where, and then it gets expressed through actions. The inspiration comes God knows from where, and it gets expressed in words. The inspiration comes God knows from where, it gets expressed in thoughts. I'm just a witness to whatever is happening on the level of the body, on the level of the mind, on the level of the speech. If I can evolve to this level of understanding, and I can surrender this tiny little ego to that universal consciousness, to that omnipresent consciousness, if I can simply surrender my limited self to my limitless self, then I have given up the sense of doership. The sense of doership gives me this opportunity. So see, while engaging in actions, while doing our work, even after bhakti yoga, even jnana yoga, the highest level of realization flows into our karma yoga. Who am I to even serve? Service is happening through whatever has been granted by the universe to me. Even my bodily energy to serve, this energy to speak, this is not mine. The world around me gives me food, nourishment, and that's where the strength comes from. I just unnecessarily identify with it and say that this is mine, and I become possessive over my body, over my speech, over my thoughts. Let them just flow and be a mere witness, like someone standing next to the river. The river just flows. Then the universal will, not my personal will, not my personal desire, but the universal will, the universal desire, the desire of the universe, if we can say so, if I'm permitted to say so, even though the universe, the divine, is free from desires. But that will, whatever the will in that moment is, starts getting manifested. I can think of many masters that I have come across in my life who lived this in their daily life. We worry for a handful of family members that we have to sustain. They sustained every pilgrim coming to them, every cow, dog, bird, and even fish that lived in the river flowing next to their hermitage. They were taking care of all of them, and yet they were totally carefree, free from worries. This is when our work itself becomes a worship of the divine present within the hearts of all beings. So the idea of giving up the sense of doership inspires one to give up even the claim of being the agent of one's activities of service. This is a state which arises naturally as a person understands one's true nature, which is that of being an uninvolved witness. And that doesn't mean to stop the body, speech, and mind, but to let the river on these three levels flow seamlessly without stopping it. Now, jnana yoga, the highest yoga, has joined our karma yoga. And this is when, in fact, true actionlessness has been achieved. this is amazing, because now I'm totally actionlessness. I'm totally in a state of actionlessness. Action is happening on the level of the body. Action is happening on the level of the speech. The inspiration is coming from somewhere and it's just flowing. And I'm just a mere witness to that. I'm not doing anything. It's just happening. This is the kind of actionlessness that, from wrong actionlessness, a misunderstanding of actionlessness, to a correct understanding of actionlessness. So we started with actionlessness, and as I promised you, the story also ended with actionlessness. So when actions happen through us in this way, it is then that true service of society takes place. Otherwise, please forgive me for saying some harsh words, but without understanding this, many of our acts of service have the danger of becoming attempts to save a fish from drowning. It is like somebody, an ignorant person sees a fish in the water and thinks, oh my God, let me save this fish so that it doesn't get drowned. It's a very good intention. That person is doing it with tremendous good intention, but in fact, that good intention, because it lacks proper understanding, it becomes harmful. Sometimes, without a proper understanding of karma yoga, sometimes our acts of service, it's a possibility. I'm just pointing out a possibility that our acts of service can have the danger of becoming such attempts. So this is then when Krishna, as the last step, that after a person has reached this level of actionlessness, still he totally lets the body, mind, and speech completely engage in the maintenance, in the upliftment of the society. For this, Krishna presents his ideals. His ideals are not some great rishis and munis sitting in the mountains of the Himalayas. Those are not Krishna's ideals. Krishna did this himself. He went into the higher Himalayas for 5 years, but then he came back, brought back that realization into his daily life. So his ideals in the Bhagavad Gita are people like King Janaka, who had this awareness and were ruling kingdoms with this awareness of being a witness. So the body, mind apparatus were ruling the kingdom, and they were just a witness to that. And the only yoga to which he presents himself as an ideal is this idea of karma yoga. He says, Arjuna, there is nothing for me to achieve in this world, and yet I let action flow from me. It is now that supreme devotion, supreme love, compassion for all living beings has joined our action, has joined our karma yoga. Parabhakti, supreme devotion, has joined it. For Krishna, nirvana is to be attained through being constantly, to let the body, speech, and mind be constantly engaged in the well-being of all beings, and yet at the same time renouncing, giving back the results of one's actions to the society, and even offering the sense of doership. That is this kind of action. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. This kind, labhante brahma nirvanam rishayah. Nirvana, he uses the word brahma nirvana. The blowing out into that universal consciousness, when this limited consciousness, like a lamp, blows out and merges into that omnipresent reality. For him, this is the path. So once again, just to finally summarize all the steps that I discussed today, the journey started with a wrong misunderstanding of non-action, to avoid which Krishna prescribed allotted action, and then he added sacrificial action to that, which then ultimately at some point needs to be transformed into desireless action. That desireless action then, the next step from there is selfless action, which simply means action which flows on its own and there is no sense of doership. This then is, in his understanding, to true non-action, on which then true uplifting action takes place, the action which truly uplifts the society. So with this, I express my gratitude to Swami Chidananji Maharaj for being the inspiration and giving me this opportunity once again, as he has done previously several times, to share my thoughts with all of you, and to Swami Abhishek Chaitanyaji Maharaj for introducing me to Swamiji back in 2014, to introduce me once again for this meeting this time, and to Brahmacharini Vibha Chaitanyaji for coordinating and organizing this event, and to each one of you for joining me, for being present. You, each one of you, has been a tremendous source of inspiration. These thoughts are thanks to each one of your presence that I have been. It feels as if you are with me here in the Himalayas, sitting in this room. Some of you have already sat in this room. You know this room very well. And I'm glad that we are once again together. It is such a pleasure, such a pleasure. Thank you very much, Swamiji. Thank you very much, Vibhaji. Please proceed.
Thank you very, very much, Siddhartha Krishnanji. It was really enlightening discourse, presentation, started with the actionless, brought into the that niyat karma and yajna karma, and brought back us to the actionlessness. This was really good, and the best part was that how the karma yoga invites bhakti yoga and jnana yoga. That merging of these three was really interesting. Thank you very much once again. You are welcome. And then now we'll ask all the attendees, whoever would like to ask questions, Siddharthji will be very happily giving you the answers. You are all welcome to do that.
Yeah, if there is any question, just you may open your mic and we can have a few discussions.
Please raise your hand as you want to ask the question. That will be easier for me
Yes.
to know that who wants. Krishji?
Krishji, yes.
Hi. Thank you very much. I was very happy. My wife and I had a lot of doubts on this actionlessness. I think you explained everything very clearly. So I just want to thank you for talking so clearly and so completely about a topic which is quite hard to understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
This Chilikuri would like to ask anything? Yes, please.
Hari Om Swamiji. Thank you very much. It was very inspiring 1 hour. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
I would like to ask the meaning of the question of the remnant thought, which used several times. I am just the witness.
Yes.
Let me explain the question. So I understand the progression that you have, and the progression that you explained to us very clearly, and the diminishment of ego or attachment that I can understand. But what is I am the witness? Is it a diminished ego that's a witness? Hari Om, please.
Yes. Yeah. This goes then really into the discussions that the masters have had in detailed texts such as Drigdrishya Viveka. So it's being the witness of the activities that are happening on the level of the body, on the level of the mind. There is a difference, you know. The word that we use for witness in Sanskrit is sakshi, and sakshi has this idea of lack of involvement, lack of emotional involvement that is there, but just allowing it to happen. And I think, for example, when we sit down in meditation, this tiny little ego which so often arises, which is merely a thought. It is a thought, this thought of I that I have of myself, which the higher I, if I may refer to, as in Vedanta, it is referred to Atman, not this tiny little I, but the real I, the one that the masters identify with that consciousness, with that space in which these thoughts arise, from which they arise, in which they exist, and then into which they merge. So and this is happening on its own. I mean, even when we sit down in meditation, we never know what thoughts are going to arise. They arise, I don't know from where. They remain there as I witness them, as I simply observe them. I don't judge them. I don't say they are good or bad. What Shri Krishna in the 14th chapter refers to as gunatita, nadveshti sampravrittani, nanivrittani kankshati. If bad thoughts come, he does not hate them. If good thoughts vanish, he does not cling unto them. He just lets the water flow on its own. So this is basically, in practical terms, that is what I understand as being a mere observer, a mere witness of all the different activities, including even the activity of I thought, this thought of I. Does that make sense? Or Swamiji would like to add something to this? He is a great Vedantin himself. Swamiji might have your mic.
I fully go with what you have said.
Yes.
And on the whole, the ego is an appearance.
Yes.
There is no reality to it.
Yes.
And we have always highlighted the supremacy of awareness.
Yes.
Therefore, there is so much emphasis on being the witness. And when we stay as the witness, we are anchored in awareness. And when we move away from being the witness, this identification grows and grows. More the identification, more nourished the ego becomes. The ego is nourished by identification.
Yes.
Therefore, with whatever ability we have, we must try to be the witness.
Yes. Yes.
None of us is free from ego, but we can at least try to hold the ego lightly in our consciousness.
Yes, that brings me to the idea of actually, Swamiji, Lord Vishnu holds the conch in his hand. Mm-hmm. And Bhagavān Shankaracharya explains this conch in his Bhashya on Vishnu Sahasranama as representing this ego. Even ultimately, ego, if it is simply, and it is a tool, it is an antahkarana, it is an internal tool. As long as it is used as a mere tool, there is in fact no problem with that. It's a very useful tool, like my eyes. They are a very useful tool. Why should I destroy them? They are such a useful tool. So in the same way, ego, Bhagwan Vishnu does not smash the conch, but he actually holds it, supports it. Consciousness, because Vishnu, the blue color, the infinite consciousness, supports these four karanas, the four ayudhas that Lord Vishnu has in his hands: manas, buddhi, ahankara, and chitta. Manas, the mind, intellect, ego, and memory. These four, they are supported. They are wonderful tools. So, but only as long as we keep in mind that this is a tool. This is not what I am. This is a tool that has been given to me. It is very useful. Even someone, and let me point this out very clearly, that to me it never makes sense to say that, oh, I don't do anything. Even great masters who perform their work selflessly, without any, in their daily life, they would say, I did this, I did that. That's conventional language. But deep down, the realization is there that this I, because it refers to that ego, it is merely a tool. That it is, yes, a tool that has been given to me, like this body. It is a wonderful tool. So this is sort of how I see it. We make a distinction between the seer and the witness. And somehow in our dreams, we have these two perspectives. One perspective is when we look at the world from behind the eyes, we see the world. Some of our dreams are like that, when we see the world around us. And some of our dreams are when we see the whole dream world as if from a third person's perspective. So somehow it is acquiring that greater perspective in which we realize that ultimately, like Yoga Vasishtha says, that even the seer is present only as long as there is something to be seen. When the seen vanishes, then the seer also vanishes. And that's why Yoga Vasishtha speaks of two ghosts constantly arising in this inner space: the ghost of the seen, and then also the ghost of the seer. And if just that space remains, the best way to express it is Sakshi. Just there is awareness. Awareness is there. A person has not become unconscious. Just awareness is there. That's all. So that is what I understand as Sakshi. That is what, yes, please, Judith.
I just want to thank you and Swamiji, and I'm not sure how to pronounce the lady's name as well.
Vibhaji.
Profoundly, yes.
Yes.
Because this was not only an amazing explanation and a fabulous talk, it is not only that this issue is most frequently misunderstood, it is not only that it is difficult to understand, as somebody pointed out, but I think this talk transcends the realm of spirituality and goes back to the reality today, which both in the West and in the East is very difficult, very challenging. And this talk, in my view, gives us tools for action, tools for thinking, and it is incredibly, incredibly helpful and important because it really makes it clear how somebody who is spiritually conscious or aware of spiritual development could live, act, and probably somehow help in the events today. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, Siddhartha-ji. This was incredibly important.
You have always been a tremendous source of inspiration, Judith. Such a wonderful friend you have been always. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you very much. A guide, a mentor, always. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Rameshji. Please unmute your mic.
Yes, please. Thank you. First of all, like all other participants, I also want to thank Siddharth-ji and all of you for this wonderful program and lecture. I've heard a few talks on Karma Yoga, but this is the most wonderful and the best talk I heard. And the maximum understanding of Karma Yoga I had today only. I have one clarification.
Yes.
You can attain nirvana only if you reach to a stage of being a witness. Is it so? Or can you attain nirvana only even if you reach a stage of desireless work, nishkāma karma?
It's a very, very profound question. Nirvana, which means blowing out. So yes, desires blow out in desireless action. But as long as that ego remains and that ego has not blown out, I don't know how far it can truly be free from desires. That's a big question. As long as I am dominated by that ego, as long as I don't see it merely as a tool, but as long as I think that this is what I am, I define my personality by that limited understanding of myself which I have, instead of acquiring this limitless understanding. As long as that has not come, it is very difficult for me to see how even true desirelessness, one may attempt to it. That is what Krishna is inspiring. But I think the completion of true desirelessness, because as long as that tiny little ego, even if it is very subtly present, where there is I, there will be mine. It's inevitable. If there is this sense of limited I, unless it is the all-embracing I, which is the higher I that I spoke of earlier, the higher I of the Upanishads, the higher I of Aham Brahmasmi, which is not I versus you and all of this, but which is that all-embracing I. So let's forget, as long as it is not that I, as long as it is this tiny limited I, which creates this distinction between me and everything else, I think it might become very subtle, but the subtler it becomes, the subtler the desires will be there. So true desirelessness. So to come back to your question, I think it comes to both. Desirelessness and egolessness, they go hand in hand. None of them can be achieved in totality on their own. And it is when a person becomes free from desires, when a person transcends that limited ego, it is then that nirvana, which simply, nirvana means blowing out of what? Blowing out of this tiny little limited flame, that's all, this identity, that's all. So that's what nirvana simply means. It's not something very, yes it is, but it's just this. So I think both are deeply connected.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Siddharthi?
Yes. Yes.
हाँ, मैं लोकेश बोल रहा हूँ।
Oh, Lokesh ji, Jai Shri
नमस्कार,
Krishna.
नमस्कार।
Pranam, 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 pranam.
बहुत दिनों बाद आपको देखा
जी,
और बहुत दिनों बाद आपसे सुना विचार आपके बहुत। तो मैं ये समझता हूँ कि what I think कि this can be achieved if you want to become a witness only, then you have to separate your body from your atma. That feeling comes ki that you are not your body, you are the witness.
Yes.
How that feeling can be achieved?
Yes.
That is my question.
Yes. Yes. I think the whole range of meditative practices of observing bodily sensations as they arise in this inner space of consciousness, as they arise as a cloud of sensations constantly arising, as we practice, and our practice is guided by the knowledge and wisdom of the masters who have achieved that state. So practice and knowledge, practice and understanding, these two things. And then not only so that it's not an intellectual understanding, but as I said, practicing that even while our body is engaged in its work. That is the only way there is. I cannot think of any other way. So meditative practices, which the Himalayan meditative traditions and so many different meditative traditions they have devised for the sake of analysis, even the simple question that something that can be experienced by me, something that can be seen by me, something that can be observed by me, by default cannot be me. In the same way, like because I see this room, I observe this room and everything in this room, that is this. So similarly, this body. So with practice as this awareness, it's just a matter of strengthening it. That comes with practice. So I think that's the only way there is. And the whole idea of karma yoga was about that.
Just practicing. I hope I get it that one day. And I can say I'm the witness. Not me. Me. I mean to say my witness. Understand that it is witness and this body is just a tool of working and serving the human. Not human, but the whole, all
everyone.
Everyone.
Everyone. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Siddharthi. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Pranam Siddhartha ji.
Pranam Dheeraj ji. Jai ho. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to hear you, Siddhartha ji.
Every day.
Pleasure. So I have a question. Yes. I want to understand. So one thing is what I am understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, that anything that we do, before doing something, there is always a desire to it. For example, if I want to read a book, there will be a desire to read a book.
Yes.
So I want to understand what is this desirelessness state?
Yes.
If desire stops, will the life stop?
Yeah. A very beautiful and a very profound question by Dheeraj ji, that without desire, it is very difficult actually to function. And that's why there are these three Shaktis, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Ichha Shakti, the potential to know, the potential to act, and the potential to desire. And all activities, in fact, because Janati, Ichhati, Karoti. We know something, then we desire it, and then we act. So in the higher analysis of Advaita, even of Advaita Vedanta, desire lies at the very root of every activity. So this is a very profound question. Yet, by desire in this case, what we mean is this constant search of happiness, satisfaction in the world out there. Trying to find peace dependent on something which is out there. Trying to find happiness which is dependent on things out there. And that's why failing to find peace, happiness, joy, which is totally independent from external objects, which is to be found within. So it is particularly that very particular type of desire. I mean, if someone engaged in the well-being of all beings has this wonderful desire one day that he has to serve someone out of the blue, that's a wonderful desire. That's a desire sent by the divine, such a desire. But this is not a selfish desire. This is a selfless desire. This is a desire in which we are not looking for something for ourselves. We are not attaching our happiness to that. We are not saying that if this happens, then I will be happy. If it happens, it's wonderful. If it doesn't happen, it is wonderful too. The desire has come, let me express it. If it gets fulfilled, it is fine. If not, it is fine too. So the desire is there, but I'm not hanging my happiness, my peace of mind on that desire. Then the desire in itself is also no problem. Then that desire, that selfless desire it becomes part of karma yoga. But when I seek to fulfill some emptiness in me, something lacking in myself, through that hard work, that is where at some point I'm bound to fail. So that is how I see. So again, desire in itself. And if you remember because we were having these discussions on the Yoga Sutras in our small little group of which you are the part, you remember when I was speaking about raga, attachment, I emphasized on stating that the attachment in itself is nothing bad. Attachment is beautiful. The kind of attachment that Patanjali speaks of is that which leads to suffering. So we have to be very mindful and careful and analyze which type of attachments, which type of desires lead to suffering and avoid them. And cultivate the good ones. For example, the desire to free ourselves from the darkness of ignorance is a wonderful desire. Let's cultivate that. What's bad to have such a desire? It's a beautiful desire. The desire to serve others is a beautiful desire. But here we are not hanging our happiness on that. So it's not dependent on, and particularly to cut everything short, It's generally understood anyway, desire in worldly terms, in terms of wealth, in terms of power, mundane power, momentary things, momentary wealth, momentary power, momentary fame, in terms of these things. But of course, the desire of inner development, the desire of purification, all those desires are there. So even in desire, we have to carefully analyze that. If someone wants to give a suggestion to this, please do so. Yes, please, Judith.
When you were speaking, what I understand is that basically we're talking about the desire of the results. So in terms of the question asked, it won't be the desire to read the book, it will be the desire to, say, get a pleasure out of reading the book or something. So am I right understanding that even in the most noble desire, it is more important to think of the action, of the work on it towards a goal, but not to be attached to the idea of what the results or the rewards will be?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. To be more process-oriented instead of being goal-oriented. Yes. That's another part of karma yoga that I think Krishna today, I did not exhaust the whole range of karma yoga. This was just 1 hour presentation, but yes, this is another quite an important idea, to be totally process oriented instead of being goal oriented. Yes, so this is also an aspect of karma yoga. Yes, thank you very much for pointing this out. Some friend was suggesting something about a talk with the Dalai Lama. Are you still here? I saw something popping up in the chat, but then,
yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, please.
Okay,
Now
so,
I see it.
So those are the books.
Yes.
Those are a series of books: The Art of Happiness, The Art of Happiness at Work, and The Art of Happiness in Troubled World. Those are the book series by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Howard Cutler, who is a psychiatrist.
Beautiful. So that's a good source to what? To what is that a good source, Lataji?
About happiness.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us.
I had a question.
Yes, please.
When somebody, you are talking about meditation and meditation practices, will reading spiritual books be considered as a meditation practice?
It's certainly preparatory. Svadhyaya, which Patanjali speaks of, it is quite important as a preparation to that. But ultimately, these scriptures, they are like torches, which at some point, I think Brahmabindu Upanishad puts it very succinctly and very beautifully, that after we have grasped the essence, what is meaningful to us, then the texts can be and should be left behind, because ultimately on the journey we have to walk on our own. They guide us, they give us tremendous guidance, and I must say that there are methods of meditating even on passages of the different masters. It is known as passage meditation. Eknath Easwaran has written a lot of good literature on that, and he has collected, in fact, passages from masters from all the different religions and cultures around the globe, and he discusses methods of meditating on passages. So it can be very much part of our meditative practices. But at some point, of course, they are like a torch. They lead us to the goal, but ultimately, I think that last extremely narrow path, there nothing can be carried, not even our scriptural knowledge. Even that has to be renounced. Even that has to be given up. Nothing can be carried in there. So yes, at some point, it has to be given up, but it is a tremendous guidance at the same time.
So what we learn from reading spiritual books, we have to put it in action.
We have to put it in action and then ultimately unlearn.
Okay. So even let go of action as well.
Yes. There is a beautiful passage that comes to my mind right now from Maharshi Vedavyasa, that first of all, renounce adharma by practicing dharma, then even renounce dharma, and then even renounce that by which you renounce it, which means that tiny little ego. So ultimately, I think the process is about unlearning, but as I said, when we speak of these higher concepts, like actionlessness is a very high concept, but it has to be understood properly. So unlearning, in the same way, unlearning is not simply not learning, but it is learn and then the capacity to renounce that, to go beyond it, to use it as far as it can take us, and then realize the limitation of that learning, and then walk beyond that, not to get attached even to that learning. When the moment comes when it has to be renounced, then even to renounce that.
Like Lord Krishna says in Gita, karmanyeva adhikaraste ma
phaleshu
phaleshu
kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhur ma te sango astu akarmani. Yes.
So it boils down to nididhyasa. Am I right, Swamiji?
It boils down from Shravana into
Manana
Manana.
to
First of all, listening to the teachings. Beautiful summary. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Shravana, first of all, listening to the teachings, then critically analyzing them. And then we enter the meditative practices, that is when gradually everything is left behind. So this is just to resolve our confusion. This information is just to resolve our misunderstandings and confusion. In fact, even not the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, they don't claim to teach us anything, because what they speak of, we already know. But there is so much background noise, that the example that the masters give, that if there is a choir and your child is singing part of that choir, in fact you are hearing it as part of that choir, but you cannot distinguish it. You cannot recognize the sound very distinctly. You don't know that, you don't realize that this is the sound of my child. You hear it. You cannot say that you are not hearing it. So it's the same way we understand ourselves, but with a lot of other misunderstandings. The work of the teachings, they cannot tell us anything about ourselves. And no Upanishad claims to do that. That would be a total misunderstanding. All it does, it just resolves the misunderstandings that we have, the layers that we have, the background noise. It just quietens down all the background noises. Yes, please.
Dhanyavad.
Please unmute your mic, Rainaji.
Yes, sir. You have to. You
Please
were
unmute
waving.
your
You
mic.
have to unmute your mic if you want to say something, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now can I carry on?
Yes, now we can hear you, sir.
Swamiji Pranam.
Pranam.
My name is D.K. Rena. I am from Pune. I listened the whole discourse on the subject. Lastly, about the scriptures which we go through, religious scriptures we go through to be on the path of the meditation. I am reminded of one example, small example, which I understood with my little knowledge. It is just like a ladder. When we use the ladder to climb an uphill, then we don't look at the ladder at all, nor we carry it along with us.
Yes.
So it has given us a supportive. This is a supportive tool to reach that particular height which we wanted to climb, and then we renounce the ladder. We don't even carry it. We don't even look at it. This is what I could understand with my limited knowledge.
Yes, yes, a very beautiful contribution, because this reminds me of what Bhagavān Shankaracharya in his commentary on the Upanishads states, what your ladder he has pointed at, and I think originally the idea is expressed by the Buddha, that to use our knowledge like a boat, to cross the river. And once you have crossed the river, you renounce it. Otherwise, you cannot walk ahead. But also don't renounce it too early. Don't, otherwise you fall. You fall into the water. You have to be, that's fine, you can fall, and then you would have to swim on your own, which is again completely fine. If you know how to swim and if you are ready to do that, that's completely fine. Otherwise, be mindful, don't leave it too early. But at some point, it has to be left. Otherwise, we cannot move ahead.
While drowning too, one attains the ability to swim of his own.
Exactly.
That is
yes.
the other dimension.
Yes, yes. Sometimes we have to be thrown into the river to learn how to swim. Yes, yes.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful,
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Hari Om. So,
Hari Om.
Swamiji, Siddhartha, can we wind up now?
Yes,
session?
yes, please. Yes, please.
Thank you so much once again. And whenever time permits, you are welcome. Yes. Swamiji, Pranam. So we wind up, Swamiji?
Yes. Swamiji will have to unmute, I think. Is Swamiji saying something? Yes.
Yes, we may perhaps close.
Yes, it is quite late. So
everybody is so happy.
Yes.
We look forward to more such interactions.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. Thank you
Hari
very
Om.
much.
Pranam, Swamiji.
My humble pranams to everyone. Thank you very much. Hari Om. Hari Om. Hari Om.